So I want to talk to you today about an organizational structure that is changing the way we build businesses, the way we work, and ultimately how we shape entire economies. And I came across this as I was working over the last 15 years and observing what is going on. And so I'm going to start with Zipcar and then take you through this path. And I'm really interested, actually, people in the back, it'd be interesting to have you re-vote on the first of those two questions afterwards to see if it changes your votes. So, if I think about Zipcar, there were 3 reasons why we had a high likelihood of success. We founded this company in 2000, so a long time ago. So the first is we leveraged excess capacity. If you think about cars today, and then there were 2 ways that you could actually consume a car. One is you could buy the entire car. It costs about 6,000 euros a year, yet you only use it 4% of the time. Or you can do car rental, in which case you have to get it in these 24-hour bundles, whether you want it for 2 hours or for 26 hours. So both ways that you consume a car, you're always forced to buy more than you want. So you're forced to consume more than you want. So just think, when people buy their car, it's the second most expensive thing they buy, and it's idle this 96% of the time. So I knew that if I was going to let people pay for just as they use, the economics were on my side because people were paying so much more than they actually consumed. So excess capacity. The second is we built a platform for participation. If you think about car rental today, I'm still very shocked that it's still taking 15 to 20 minutes, and we had it down to 30 seconds that you can book and reserve the car. Because if you're going to do it by the hour, we can't have a counter and a person who's between you and the car. We had to take out the middleman and put the consumer right up next to this thing. We had to make a complex system incredibly simple. We gave you the power of that. The third thing we did is we thought of our customers as our collaborators. So let me go back to the car rental model. If you think about car rental versus Zipcar, with car rental, there's a counter between me and you. And if I'm the owner, I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, I definitely don't trust you. I know you're going to scratch the car or have an accident, not tell me about it. I don't trust you. And you're looking at me saying, whoa, you quoted this one price, but now you're trying to make me go into a fancier car. You're going to charge me for insurance I don't need. I definitely don't trust you. So it's a very adversarial relationship. Zipcar said, we're taking this counter away. We're all in this together. We're going to ask you to do things that we used to do. You're going to walk around the car and tell us if it's in good repair. You're going to tell us which cars you want, where we should park them. We're going to have a fuel card that we leave in the car, and you're going to fill it up when it gets to a quarter of a tank. So you are our friends, we trust you. And this image for me is, I'm seeing where I'm standing here, this image is very powerful for me because it's showing these are people who are leaving the hospital with their firstborn children. And their thought was, wait, let me take a photo and send it to Zipcar. I can tell you I have 3 children, and it did not cross my mind to tell any private sector company what I was doing. So we had a very tight relationships with our customers, and we thought of them as our collaborators, not consumers. And if you think of this word in English, consumer, doesn't it sound very 1950s? Do you feel like a consumer? No, you feel like you are a participant in whatever this sale or this transaction is. I found this cartoon recently, and so here's Moses coming out of the mountain, and a person says, is there a section on the bottom for comments? So even with God, we expect ourselves to be co-creators and to be participants. The idea that we are sitting back and waiting for everything to be given to us is a very old thought and is not the way we go forward. So it's these 3 elements, excess capacity, people, and platforms, that are the key building blocks of this new organizational structure. And it's this that I'm calling Peers, Inc., and it's people and platforms. They're inventing the collaborative economy and reinventing capitalism. You will have seen this structure many times before. These companies that we've been talking about over the last 15 years are all platforms. They're all Peers Inc. companies leveraging excess capacity. And I threw down the side here all these other ones. So I think about the free and open source movement as a Peers Inc. collaboration. When we think about WhatsApp, it's a Peers Inc. collaboration. You know, open data and open devices, co-housing, co-work, all of that collaborative work is a Peers Inc. collaboration. Bitcoin, the blockchain, all of these are platforms, leveraging excess capacity, and inviting in the participation of others. And I'll go through this a little in detail now. If I think about this idea of sharing, I think I missed the first half of the slide. If we think about this idea of excess capacity, it is fundamentally an act of sharing, because I'm saying I'm not controlling this whole asset. Someone else is also using this asset. I'm sharing with them. So whenever I think about excess capacity, I'm thinking about sharing. And my favorite example here will be bed sharing, of which maybe you guys have done some bed sharing in your lives. I do a lot of bed sharing because I travel a lot, and I am constantly on the road. And so I might be staying at my friends' houses, which is where I am now, and could be their home office, and I think that's great, it's multi-purposed. Or I can get a double bed, yahoo, that's what I'm staying in my friend's apartment now. I have a queen-size bed to myself, yes, it's excellent. Or they could have told the teenager, you go sleep on the couch, Robin's gonna sleep in your bed, and I can say, absolutely not, thank you very much, that's why we have hotels. Hotels are bed sharing. When I was doing Zipcar, I would forbid my staff from calling it car sharing because, number one, no one knew what car sharing meant. You were still going to have to do many more sentences to describe it. And I would say, imagine if we called hotels bed sharing. So just think, it is the exact same business model as Zipcar. You're trying to maximize the return on asset over a 7-day week. And when you're laying your head next time on that pillow, bed sharing. So I went to do some research. What is the largest bed sharing in the world? And you might know where I'm going with this. So the Intercontinental Hotels Group, they're 65 years old, 650,000 rooms in 100 countries. And we can know that was an enormous amount of work because Hilton has been at it for 93 years and had not had that, didn't have that same representation. So I'm going to say here, Airbnb in its 4th year had 650,000 rooms. And I would say, wow, like, oh my God, what happened? An entire sector was disrupted in 4 years. Like, how in hell did that happen? And Couchsurfing, if you'll remember that, in its 9th year had 2.5 million places that you could sleep. No money was transacting in every country in the world. So the question is, what happened and how can I do that, right? I want to be able to do that. So I thought, okay, so what is happening? Why did we ever invent companies? Why did we invent governments? Why did we invent big organizations? We invented them to do things that we as individuals can't do. And I think of these things as industrial strengths. And so what are the things that I can't do? So if it's something that's going to cost millions of dollars, don't ask me, I don't have millions of dollars. I have to invent a company or a government to do that. If it's going to be something that requires lots of kinds of intelligence, I might be brilliant at 2 things, but if I'm going to need 10 types of expertise, I have to put an organization together so we can do that. If it's something that's going to require standards or standardization, I, Robin Chase, can't tell you to do anything the same way. You don't care what I think. It has to have something with power and size to say you're going to do it this way each and every time. These are typically bound together, these strengths, and a kind of brand promise, and these entities are often global. On the flip side are industrial strengths, individual strengths. There are actually many things that individuals do better than a big-scale thing. And so what are those things? In this individual strengths, I'm coupling also people and NGOs and local companies. So what are these things? Localization, customization, and specialization. Small entities do that way bigger than big ones. They can do it. It's incredibly expensive. They don't want to do it. So if you think about the last 100 years of industrial capitalism, it has been all about ripping out the specialized, customized, and individualized to give you very standardized things and get the price down. So that has been the path. Interestingly, these 2 things are very, very complementary. And so what has changed? This is the new organizational structure that I'm calling Peers Inc. And what has changed is now the internet exists. And it's the internet that makes dealing with many small parts and lots of small transactions effortless and without cost. So today, for the first time ever, we are able to have the best of both types of strengths, the best of industrial capitalism and these big things, and the best of what smaller entities have to offer. I put these 2 things together. So the Inc. side provides a platform for participation, and the Peers provide the diversity of offering. And simplifying, I think of it as a yin-yang, so it's very, very complementary and symbiotic, and each side has to leave enough value on the table, otherwise the other side doesn't want to play. And it's all kind of swimming in the sea of excess capacity. So let me go through these three things. So if you think about excess capacity, what I love about it is that it's very resource and cost efficient, and I'm an environmentalist and a business person, so these are quite important to me. Defining excess capacity is something that already exists, it's already been paid for, but there's more value there. And if you take away one important thing, it is this idea of excess capacity, and I'm going to try to give you as many examples of it as I can. So look for excess capacity. Once you find it, what do you do with it? How do you harness it? One, you slice it, and that's what Zipcar did. Zipcar took an asset that you had to buy the whole thing and said, you're only going to have to pay as you go. You can buy it by the hour. And WeWork, I would say, is an example of this. And so we have be having someone from WeWork later in this next panel. So here it is, founded in 2010, 110 locations. As you know, it just had its $1 billion in financing and valued at $20 billion. What is it doing? I used to have to rent an entire office by the month, and now I can rent very small pieces in this very small increment way. Two, so slice or aggregate. And so Airbnb has aggregated. It has taken millions of little spaces around the world and aggregated them onto a platform with one shared insurance product, with the same way I communicate and pay, so I can compare and contrast very easily. It is wholly different than a million little beds and breakfasts around the world, right? It's got a totally different value proposition. Or three, which is actually the most interesting thing you can do, which is to open up those assets and say, hey, what good ideas do you guys have for these assets I have? And so my example here would be open data. So McKinsey did this nice report in 2013. They said there's 40 countries that have opened up 1 million data sets, and there's $3 trillion worth of value there. So I just want you to think about this for a minute. This was data that was collected by governments or transit authorities that they paid for, they were happy with, they got all the value they wanted out of it. By making standard open APIs, the platform for participation, they invited the world in and said, hey, do whatever good ideas you have on it, and there's $3 trillion worth of brand new value. So I think of this as pulling abundance out of what we thought was scarcity. So when you open up excess capacity, you're just opening things wide up. So I've been thinking about this in your sector. So what are the ways you can harness excess capacity? So if you took the slice method, what is the Zipcar or WeWork of retail space? No one's been doing that yet. So what does retail by the hour, by the day look like? Or aggregating. What is the Airbnb of retail space? And how do we enable retail owners to rent it out, for them to rent out their space by the hour and by the day? Or how about open? What would it look like to open up your excess capacity, which we see all the time? So your reception areas, your basements, your rooftops, open space, excess heat, available for outside ideas. What kind of innovations might happen that you personally can't come up with? So here's I'm sorry, this is kind of small. I just found these two. This was done by Sidewalk Labs. So this is what this space looked like in the daytime, and in the night, it turns into a bar. So what are ways that we can really maximize and get the most out of every single space? So now let me talk about the Inc. part. The Inc. builds the platform for participation, and with it, it delivers platformness. And platformness is it organizes lots of small parts, it makes complex things very simple, and importantly, it gives the power of the large entity to the small. And we can also, if we're lucky, get all these economies of scale and the potential for very high growth. My example here is a company I like called BlaBlaCar that is real ride sharing. I'm going from Paris to Berlin in my own car, and I have 3 empty seats. They've been around since actually 2006, and I want to point out their growth curve. This is a very typical growth curve for a platform company. It takes a long time to get that platform right, a lot of iterations. Most platforms fail. If you manage to get the platform right, you have this exponential growth curve. They're actually transporting, I think, 5 million people every month now, so it's the same as 10,000 trains or 10,000 high-speed rail trains and planes. They're moving 20 million people every month without laying a single track, buying a rail car, buying a plane. It's all harnessing excess capacity on a platform for participation and inviting in the participation of others. Today, I just was looking at numbers to update this. They have 60 million members. And so they are doing a fantastic job in 22 countries. So let's look at the peers. What do the peers bring? They bring diversity of offering, which comes with innovation, resilience, and redundancy. And it's because of what the peers are bringing that this is a business organizational structure that beats out every other one. We are finally able to harness and take advantage of the brilliance of this diversity. And my example here would be smartphones and apps. If you think of the smartphone, it is the platform. It costs hundreds of millions of dollars to be able to build and design, build the operating system and design that phone. Whereas the apps, they are very light and easy. And in theory, individuals can do them, not me. And so since they were founded, since smartphones came out 10 years ago, we have had many millions of apps on top of that. And I want you to imagine, so no matter how brilliant we thought Steve Jobs was, he would never, ever have been able to come up with this number of different ways and use cases of this platform. So here's this device. What can you do with it? And as individuals with their life experience and their sector experience and their knowledge of what's the possibilities, that they've been able to come up with this millions of ways that you can use this smartphone. And I want you to think about the app as a platform in another way, that this device, it costs $600 or $1,000, and I bought it for 3 to 5 important things to me. Every other app is a free rider on there. Every other app is taking advantage of the fact that I've already bought my phone. They're taking advantage of my contact list, my GPS. Most of those apps would in no way make you buy a $600 phone. So they're all free riders leveraging the excess capacity in this thing that you've already bought. If I think about these Peers, Inc., I just want to say to the person who's got the timer, I think I have another 10 minutes. If we think about Peers, Inc., it has these characteristics that are so phenomenal, I think of them as quite miraculous. And before I tell you what those miracles are, I'm going to make you deeply depressed, and then I will tell you the miracles, and you'll have this wonderful release of how great, okay? So now's the really bad part. So what is the most terrifying thing that I can think of? And that would be global warming. And I'm going to show you a slide that is, globally, is this year hotter or colder than the 20th century average of the planet? And so you can see that if you've been born since 1980, you have never experienced a cooler than average year. And you can see here is 2015, how much hotter it was. 2016, 2017, we had already warmed the planet almost a degree. And scientists are telling us that they're predicting that we will raise the planetary temperature by 5 or 6 degrees centigrade by 2100 with business as usual. And so the question for you and for me is, what does it feel like to warm a planet by 5 or 6 degrees? I have no idea. I have to do some research. So I went and did my research, and I found out that the last time it was minus 4.5 degrees was the last ice age 20,000 years ago. And this is ice on top of the city skylines. So Montreal under 3 kilometers of ice. My bed in Boston is here under 1.5 kilometers of ice. So that is what it feels like to warm a planet by 4.5 degrees, over 20,000 years. We are going forward that amount in 80. So if you have any doubt in your mind that you think people can survive a 4.5 or 5 or 6 degree global warming, just internalize what this has shown us in the past. So I have a friend named Bani Banerjee at Stanford, and he has this nice sentence: you can't solve exponential problems with linear solutions. And I feel like we have been trying to address climate change with these linear solutions, and it's a seriously exponential problem. And so I say try Peers, Inc. So now for these miracles. Miracle number 1. Because we are leveraging excess capacity, we can defy the laws of physics. What do I mean by that? Imagine in 2000, instead of inventing Zipcar, I said, you know what? In 4 years, I'm going to build the largest hotel chain in the world. I'm going to go get the properties in those countries around the world. I'm going to have architects design it. I'm going to get it financed. I'm going to build it. I'm going to put all the furniture in. I'm going to hire the staff. I'm going to do a beautiful job everywhere. In 4 years, I'll have that done. You experts in this room would tell me, absolutely physically impossible, Robin. There's no way in hell you can do that. No one would ever have invested in that company. So here's what business as usual asset building would look like over 6 years, and here's Airbnb's growth curve. And why? Because they built a platform for participation, leveraging excess capacity and invited in the participation of others. You cannot have this growth doing it any other way. This is the only way we can move at this kind of speed and scale. Miracle number 2. Because we are building platforms for participation, we can tap exponential learning. So the example I'm going to use is how learning is the number of iterations you can get in your lifetime. So if you think about you're learning something, how many iterations can I get to be good at something? And we've always thought that businesses were on a faster learning, higher learning curve. Platform companies are on a higher learning curve still if they're paying attention to their numbers and really getting the most out of that. So the example I want to use is how quickly can you learn a foreign language? And the unit of measurement for foreign languages is what can you learn in a semester of university, which is about 130 hours. So it used to be that the number one was the Rosetta Stone, and they would do it in 54 hours, and you would say, whoa, 54 hours is way better than 130 hours. I'm buying Rosetta Stone. It's very expensive. My boss is paying. Excellent. I'm doing it. A company I really love is Duolingo. And Duolingo does free online language learning. And every day, every single question is an A/B test, meaning they ask half the people one way, and they ask half the people the other way. And because they have so many learners, overnight they'll have 150,000 people will take that A/B test, and they will know profoundly which is the better way to ask the question to get you to learn it. So they have it down to 34 hours in which they will reliably teach you a semester of a language. And I can tell you this is reliable. This company was founded in 2013. They have over 50 million people who are actively engaged every month on this platform. And I just want to enunciate, so what was the excess capacity? How Robin failed on tests? No one thought it was an interesting data point. Louis Van Aan, the CEO, who's a data scientist, said, whoa, there's some really, really interesting information I can get out of that. And that's how he built this company. And another piece that he did is phenomenal to me, is if you think of language learning, it comes in language pairs. My native tongue is English, and I want to learn Spanish. My native tongue is English, and I want to learn Czechoslovakian. Of the 50 million people who are actively using this, a year and a half ago, he opened up his platform and said, anybody can build language pairs that you want. And 50% of the learners are learning language pairs that he did not create. So half of this growth is coming from outside people building on his platform. So, number 3, because we are working with a diversity of peers, the right person will appear. And I don't mean Superman. Like Superman, he's strong and he can fly like whatever. Everyone in this audience with their smartphone is already better because we can know, what's the emergency, who are the experts, what's the best path there, and what's the weather. Like we can get it down. My example here will be another real estate one. So in December of 2014, Obama said, you know what? I think I'm going to normalize relations with Cuba. 6 months later, 2,000 listings in Cuba. You cannot do this any other way. So, to summarize, Peers Inc. is profoundly a collaboration. You can't get these assets without both sides. So we can't get exponential growth if we don't have the platform organizing and unleashing the excess capacity and the peers co-investing. We can't tap exponential learning if we don't have the hundreds of thousands of crazy ways people do things and the platform that's doing the analysis and the deep thinking and figuring out, here's the best path, I'm going to make that easier. Here's the worst path, I'm going to make that harder. And the right person can't appear if you don't have the platform that's doing its deep analysis and saying, oh, here's the needle out of the haystack that you want right now. We need to have these two pieces together. So coming to a summary, I believe the era of industrial capitalism is behind us. And I would define industrial capitalism as it used to be the best way to extract value out of resources. It used to be that you would do that by putting a very strong barrier around the company, and you would know what was in and what was out. Who did things belong to? And we did that with patents and copyrights and certifications and trademarks, and it was very, very strong definition around the company. Today, we have this new collaborative economy where it's a completely fuzzy mess. Is this an employee or not an employee? Whose asset is this? Is this work time or personal time? Is this for commercial use or residential use? It's all this big kind of mixed up mess. And so I'm going to leave you with 4 things for principles that feel to me profoundly true. And if you think they are true too, then you are with me that we have moved to the collaborative economy, and the collaborative economy is the future. So number one, shared networked assets always deliver more value than closed proprietary ones. And we know it happens two ways. One, the asset is much more efficiently used, or number two, brand new value and brand new ideas have been pulled out of that asset. So shared networked assets deliver more value than closed proprietary ones. The next one, which is kind of old, no matter how brilliant you guys are in the room, you know statistically there are more people outside of the room. The internet exists. More networked minds are smarter, more creative, more local, more specialized, more customized than fewer proprietary minds in one company, in one city, in one country. It is the fact. More networked minds are better than fewer proprietary minds. If we think about the benefits and opportunities of shared open assets, they are larger than the problems associated with shared open assets. When I did Zipcar, the people who would not invest said to me, Robin, people are going to ruin the cars, they're never going to tell you about it. You know what? That is a problem. A very small percentage of people are jerks, and we penalize them, and then we throw them out. Meanwhile, the opportunities are much larger. Today, 1 million people are sharing 13,000 cars parked in cities across the world. Or you can think about Wikipedia when it launched. Everyone said, it's going to be filled with factual mistakes, they're going to do graffiti on people's pages. True, that is an issue. Problems rise up, we can correct them. Meanwhile, there are 5 million entries in the English language encyclopedia. So the benefits are larger than the problems associated with them. And lastly, I'm very self-centered. I don't care about what anyone else thinks. I only do things for myself. When I participate in these, I always get more than I give. I edit 3 lines in Wikipedia, and I get that whole encyclopedia. I make 3 hours of reservations a month on Zipcar, and I personally, Robin Chase, have 13,000 cars in cities around the world that I can rent on no notice. So I put in my little tiny part, and I get this big whole. I always get more than I give. So if I think about the times in which we are living, with the future of employment and labor uncertain, the future of capitalism uncertain, the pace of technology change driving uncertainty, the pace of climate change disruption incredibly uncertain. What I know is that this organizational structure is the one for these times because it enables us to experiment, iterate, adapt, and evolve at the greatest pace. And so I'm going to leave you to be thinking. I did write a book called Peers, Inc., and so you need to think, how can you Peers, Inc. your assets? Are you the platform? Are you the peers? What is the way you're going? Thank you.